Welcome into our lives.
And welcome to the Expanders Club podcast.
We're so happy to have you.
Join us as we embark on a journey of deep exploration, soul searching, and asking the hard questions.
With the goal of truly understanding the most aligned, empowered, and purposeful versions of ourselves.
We want to live an extraordinary life, and we're willing to dig deep to find out what it takes.
Buckle up. You're about to meet a new version of yourself, an extraordinary one.
Hello. Welcome to the Expanders Club podcast.
Hi, everyone. I am Brooke.
And I'm Maddie.
And we're so excited you've decided to join us and learn and hang out and chat. And our goal is, to provide insight on our healing journey, our journey of transformation, of growth, share our own experiences, but also bring in people who have had their own experiences and are maybe, on a different path than we are, to kind of give that variety, those learnings, that information, that education, and hope that something in between resonates with all of you. And this episode, Mads, is a freaking good one.
Yeah, I loved this one. I love this topic, and it just feels so fitting right now with all the work that I'm doing and concentrating on. I think you guys are going to find this really interesting. It's so relevant.
So we're talking about HRV, which means heart rate variability. If you have a wearable like the Oura ring that I wear, you wear the Whoop, right?
You used to wear the Whoop.
Or the Apple Watch, or I'm sure there's a million others. But if you have one of those, you're probably familiar with HRV.
Which I only just became aware very recently.
Yeah.
You've been recording it for a little while.
Yeah, a little over a year. I've had some, for about a year and a half, I've had some what I felt like were heart issues. Like I could feel irregular beating. I could feel like my heart rate was elevated at really weird times. And so last February-ish, I got my Oura ring, and the information.
There were some insights.
Yes. The information it shared was worrisome. And to be honest, still is. And I've done a ton of work. And so for anyone who hangs out on our Instagram, you may have saw, I finally, after a year and a half of stuff and trying stuff on my own, I went to the heart doctor back in February to try and get some answers. And the answer was my heart, I guess from a medical standard, it is pretty much fine. So that's great, but also a little frustrating because
no explanation.
And I think it pretty much means the root of it all is stress, which actually this recording kind of confirmed for me. And I asked my doctor about HRV when I was in his office, my cardiologist, because it was one of the things that I had been looking at on my Oura stats and comparing with friends and realizing oh shit, mine is way different than anyone else's in a very bad way. And he was gave me no explanation of even what HRV was and was yeah, that's not really something we measure or look at.
What? How can it be such a measure for certain people and then doctors and things don't even go by it?
Yeah, because they're just looking at the physical things of the heart is kind of what my experience was. And Salim said something interesting, and I've heard this and thought about this many times before, and it's a little bit of a hard truth or hard realization, especially if your heart is not feeling great, is the heart and the soul are kind of one and the same, or the heart is connected to the soul. Mm-hmm. And how do you measure that or look at that in a medical setting? I guess you can't, and there's actually not a lot of soul happening in the medical setting.
Yeah.
Anyway, so
okay, so this is a way more holistic approach, and probably, especially in our world, who are people who are looking at it from a bigger standpoint of okay, you've got things going on in your health, what's also going on in your mindset, your body, your past traumas, etc.
Yeah, and this I actually wanted to and did cry a little bit through this episode.
Ooh, healing.
Yeah, yes, but also fuck. Kind of I've done so much work. So Salim talks about HRV. With HRV, the higher the number, the better, which is a little bit different than heart rate, right? So Mads, what's your like regular HRV number? Like what's the range?
Oh, I was on average 140. And then when I was really good, I was like, would go up to like 200.
Yeah. And Salim talks about that. He says his is regularly between like 160 and 180. And then obviously on good days, he can get it much higher.
Mm-hmm.
My heart rate variability to this day, this morning, was 16. 1-6. And like the day before it was 14. So I'm in the teens. I've been down as low as like 10. And the highest I've been was on a 4-day solo retreat that I did last year where I had nothing to do. I was getting body work every day. I was by myself, and the highest I got was 40.
Really?
So that's a little bit of a hard pill to swallow, especially how he talks about it, where it's like it's literally measuring your life force. It's measuring how your heart is perceiving your environment.
Oh.
And so, yeah, you have to understand and think about what the underlying stories are. And I know them and I've been working on them, but like, I don't know. It just is like, fuck it. This is a real moment for reflection and like maybe the incremental progress like isn't enough. You know, he talks about something, and I've told you this, and I've told you, and maybe Dennis, my husband, are the only ones that I've told. But when I was at my worst, I actually had a real fear that I was going to die, and that's something Salim talks about in this. And like, you know, if it is stress, and you think about the things that are causing stress, you're like, is any of that worth it? Like, is any of that worth the compromise of life or of living, or even not on the like black and white piece of like, okay, now I'm dead, my heart stops, but like, are you really living if your heart and body are perceiving your environment to not be safe, not be aligned, not be good for you?
Yeah. And how do you like overcoming that feels like such an unknown fight, because it's with health, you know what you can do. You know that you can get more sleep. You know that you can hydrate more, exercise more, eat well. But when it comes to actually connecting your heart and your soul, and it's an emotional journey, it's a healing journey, it's de-stressing, bringing awareness in. When you've been battling with stress for so long, it's so ingrained in you, and healing from trauma, I guess it's just such a longer term journey, and you can't be hard on yourself, because if you get more stressed over the numbers, which is what he speaks about as well, then it's not worth it. If you're just comparing numbers and that's causing you stress, then don't, because it doesn't feel like it's like, oh, between this age range, you should be this HRV to this HRV. There's like no regulation around that. There's no like guidance around that. It's just like a constant life's work to get a higher and higher HRV.
Yeah, and he talks about stress, and obviously stress is kind of the biggest thing that's impacting the HRV, but talks about how stress is kind of the root cause or plays a huge role on any issue that's happening within our bodies, and is definitely a cause of massive inflammation in the body. And it's like, yes, trauma, but for me, I think I'm in a state where like the stress that I deal with then like triggers the memories or feeling of trauma within my body. And so it's like this vicious cycle.
Yeah.
Right?
It reactivates it.
Yeah. And it's like, where do you start with the healing? Do you heal the trauma? Do you heal the stress? Do you have to do them both at the same time? Sometimes it feels like it just needs it's like, okay, let's pause, wipe everything clean, and just start from zero. And how would you look at life if you were optimizing to not be stressed? You know?
I mean, when you've got the pressures of business, a family, finances, all of this, so badly wanting to pursue your passion and on this journey of constantly focusing on self-growth, it is stressful because it's more from the pressure.
Yeah. There's a lot of layers there. The conditioning to think it is stressful and think it's okay for it to be stressful. this is the one that like really got me, what he said. And I know this to be true, and I've thought it and felt it so much, but your HRV is a measure of how aligned you are with your soul. And that, even just saying that, like, makes my heart sink a bit, because it's like, that's the hard truth to deny.
Yeah, but just because your number's low doesn't mean that is the truth. And that doesn't mean that someone that's got a higher HRV necessarily is so much more connected.
Yeah, but I don't need the numbers. The numbers just reinforce it. Like, I already know that. I know that I'm in a lot of ways out of alignment, and have been for a long time. And I'm taking the baby steps to get in alignment. But it's like, like, I feel like I've made so much progress, and yet the numbers and how I feel, the numbers are just an expression of how I feel internally. And like, our brain can override that, right?
Yeah.
And be like, no, it's just an off day, or not even acknowledge it and bypass how the body's feeling. And the numbers are just like a little reminder of like, hey, still got some work to do.
How do you feel?
Yeah. Thanks for asking. I feel better than I have. I feel like there's still a lot going on in my head that's like a little bit disconnected from my body and spirit. So I feel like I'm like kind of jumping over some hard truths that I'm just like, oof, don't fully want to face, but like, I'm about to. This episode, and I want to listen to it probably 2 or 3 more times. There's so many good little nuggets in there, but like, this episode felt, moments I had where my heart just dropped and I was really sad, but it felt really motivating too, of like, this is completely in my hands, and I can make the change at any moment, and like set myself free and live in alignment with my soul.
Oh, that's beautiful that this was empowering for you, and actually seeing hope, because when you're speaking to doctors and they're like, nah, I mean, HRV, it doesn't matter, there's nothing you can do. And now for you to actually understand and see the connection and be like, oh, okay, I know the work.
Yeah. And I'm excited for people to understand this, because I don't feel like there's a lot of information out there, or anyone's really talking about it, even though we're all tracking our HRV. Like, there's not really good resources. So I think Salim puts out he says a lot of great stuff in here, but I think he puts out a lot of good information too. And when you hear his journey, it's super relatable. And like, like many of us, he hit rock bottom before he decided to start paying attention to this stuff. So I'm hoping the work for us sharing this, and I'm sure for his work, is to allow some people to not hit rock bottom, before they are able to recognize something needs to change, and like give themselves permission to make those changes.
Yeah. And giving more biomarkers to measure than just like blood work that you do at the doctor. Like, actually something that you can measure on a day-to-day basis that connects you to your body and helps you really understand what's going on for yourself. Yeah. So it's pretty cool. The conversation's great. He's inspiring. You guys obviously dive into HRV and talk about that a ton, but in general, he had a lot of like great advice, inspiring things to say. He gave advice, the baking soda advice. I know.
And one of the things he says, and I need to look up, and I'm about to buy these things today. He says he brushes his teeth with hydrogen peroxide and baking soda, right? His teeth are fucking glowing. I know. That was one of the first things I noticed when his face popped on the screen. I was like, those are the whitest teeth I've ever seen.
Yeah, like, anyone wants that. Like, you must be onto something.
Exactly.
I don't know. Yeah, he got the tips, and if it's all natural, we're here for it.
Yeah. So a really fun one. Thanks for doing this, and my heart felt good that you asked a question for me. So thank you very much.
Yeah, of course, B. Got to have your back. Got to keep you alive. I'm concerned about these numbers, but you're going to be great. And you guys can follow Salim at that HRV guy.
It's a weird one. That HRV guy.
Yeah. He's good. He's got great content and great information and super inspiring. So I hope you guys love it today.
Yeah, and if you do share with a friend, everyone is wearing those wearables and don't really know what it means. So it's a great conversation starter, maybe a great way to help a friend kind of understand their numbers and reframe some stuff. And please follow, rate, leave a review, come hang out with us on Instagram at Expanders Club and TikTok, all the places. We love and appreciate you guys and hope you love this one.
Enjoy.
Salim, welcome to the Expanders Club podcast.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited and grateful to be on here.
Oh, it's a treat to have you here. I think there was no way that we weren't going to be connected soon. I think I was already following you because I'm interested in your work. And when I had put something out on social media about my HRV, because I was so confused about how, like, the numbers, etc. I'd put my HRV up and I had multiple people say, hey, you've got to speak to Salim. You've got to speak to Salim. He's going to help you. He's the guy to speak to. And I was like, okay, well, the universe is telling me I have to speak to him. So I'm glad that we get to chat in this space and share your knowledge with the rest of the world.
And I appreciate you reaching out the way you did. Yeah.
Of course. So I guess we should give the audience a little bit of a background of who you are and what even HRV is, but I think we're going to get to that. But yeah, tell me a little bit about you.
Yeah, a little bit about me. I am first generation Lebanese. So both my parents were born and raised in Lebanon, and then I was born and raised in upstate New York. I went to school for engineering. I graduated and worked at a nuclear power plant for 5.5 years. I share that to say a very left brain engineering analytical mind, to say the least. And it was during that time, actually after I graduated, that my wellness journey really started. My father passed away at a young age when I was 7, and never really processed it, obviously, at that age. And then my grandma, who was like my second mother, raised us, and then she got breast cancer when I graduated college. And I was like, what the hell is going on in the world? Like, everybody I know, people I'm close with, is touched by cancer. So I started doing my own research, and I came across this Dr. Tullio Simoncelli, who supported hundreds of cancer patients with baking soda, sodium bicarbonate, a natural alkalizer, because he believes that cancer cannot thrive in an oxygen-rich alkaline environment, and baking soda increases your alkalinity. And most people, especially in the West, are acidic because of the sugar and the processed food that we eat. So that was a pivotal moment in my life, because it was the first time that I realized we see what people want us to see, and there is so much more out there. And so my engineering, curious, analytical mind just went down rabbit holes in every way, to the point where actually the last 10 years I've only showered with baking soda. I brush my teeth with baking soda. This video, it's a hilarious video, went viral on TikTok. It over 500,000 views, me talking about baking soda on a Primal Kitchen podcast with Morgan. But yeah, I just went, my mind in the past has tended to go to the extreme in everything, which has served me so well. And this is a year of balance. But
do you still do that?
Extreme?
No, do you still use the baking soda for everything?
Oh, yeah. In my shower right now is a cup of baking soda. For years, I brush my teeth with baking soda and hydrogen peroxide. I only wash my clothes with baking soda. Yeah.
Oh, well, I've got to try this.
You really should also look at the comments on TikTok, because it became like a meme and people are like, yeah. Anyway, that journey led to like my diet change, and I tried every diet and essentially came across ketosis like 15 years ago, before the consumer packaged good industry totally ruined it. And I fell in love and cut out sugar. So I would only drink water and unsweetened tea. And a colleague of mine at the nuclear power plant was health conscious as well, and we drink our yerba mate every day together. And he loved bubbles, and so he bought a soda stream, brewed the mate, cooled it, put it in a soda stream, and voila, the first sparkling tea was born. And he brought it into me to try. And at that point, I was like investing in real estate, trying to find something that like filled my passion of like health and wellness. And when I tried it, like I say, it was love at first sip. I got the hiccups instantly, and we started moonlighting on the side and actually developed the first iteration of the product over a decade ago, and then quit and went all in and launched Sound. And it's sound as an adjective: sound body, sound mind, sound ingredients, sound mission. really with a goal to bring transparency and education into the consumer packaged goods space, specifically beverage, because it is mind-boggling. People have no idea what they're consuming, especially around natural flavors. So we used only single source organic herb botanical fruit extracts. So the cleanest version of an ingredient you can get. We had no idea what we were getting into, and arguably one of the most challenging industries. And it was actually around this time, a decade ago, when we launched that and I quit and moved to the city, New York City, that the biohacking movement began, with Dave Asbury and Ben Greenfield and all these like technologies that very much at the time were being marketed as like productivity going doing. And my beautiful extreme mind went all in, and tried everything you could possibly imagine under the sun, to the point where I was showing off I was sleeping 5 hours a day, running 10 miles every other day, listening to audiobooks while I'm running, like going, doing, winning, never shutting off, raising money for the beverage space, like in that, what people associate biohacking with. And 4 years of that, I burnt out, and my body so beautifully gifted me a blown knee, which forced me to find another way to release my sweat and get those sweat endorphins. And I came across Bikram yoga. It was the first time in my life my mind was forced to like shut up. And it was at that time that I was reading a whole lot, and I read Dr. Joe Dispenza's Becoming Supernatural. And it was the first time I ever read anything about HRV. In the beginning of the book, he talks about HRV and just mentions its relation to stress. Did you have something?
No, great book.
Really? Yeah, it's amazing book. And at the time I had an Oura ring and I was measuring, I knew it had HRV, but like most people, like nobody talks about it, right? I didn't know what it meant. And I was more concerned with the readiness score and the sleep score. But when he mentioned its relationship to stress, at that time, I very much knew from my insane curiosity in biohacking that like on a cellular level, we all age, get disease, and eventually die from stress. Like period, end of story, unless you die in an accident. The root cause of everything is stress, because when you are in a high beta sympathetic stressful state, it causes, for long periods of time, it causes inflammation on a cellular level. And inflammation on a cellular level is what leads to everything. And so I was like, okay. And I went down this rabbit hole of HRV and I was like, oh man, that's what this is measuring. So let's pause and talk about HRV right now. So yes. HRV, heart rate variability. It is measuring the variance between each of your heartbeats, which indicates how your heart is managing its perceived changing environment. So essentially your relationship with your perceived stress and the health of your autonomic nervous system and its agility to go from a sympathetic fight or flight state to a parasympathetic rest and digest state, right? And so if stress is the root cause of all aging and death, then this biomarker is the most important biomarker for longevity and health. And that's my opinion. And when that clicked 5 years ago, I took all of my extreme mind intention and everything I do to like, oh, I only care about this biomarker. And at the time I was around like 30 milliseconds was my average like nightly HRV. And over 5 years with a lot of intention, have gotten it up to 160, 180. I've peaked at actually 245 following like a plant ceremony. And it's been such a beautiful, beautiful journey. And I've learned so much around it. And it has become for me, like one of my biggest purposes and mission is just to simply bring awareness and education to this metric, because I believe once people become aware of it, they obviously want to improve it. People want to not be stressed and be happy and healthy. And if you want to improve this metric, you actually want to regulate your nervous system. You want to increase your agency. You want to increase your consciousness, because that's another way I define it. It's a measure of your consciousness. It's a measure of your energetic aura field, because your energetic aura field is a reflection of your internal state. And HRV is measuring your internal state.
I only just became familiar with HRV recently when I got a Whoop band, and I had no idea what it was before. I would have only thought that heart rate would be a measure of that to measure your nervous system. And I saw such extreme ups and downs of mine, like going down to like 80 up to like, 200 and above. And that sparked my interest of like, what is this? What is going on here? And I love that you are actually educating about this, because so many people I feel like don't really understand. And if there's a better measure, we're like you said, constantly in this mode of working, like just like you were in the grind of starting a beverage company, you would just like every moment of the day stimulated, like get up, probably drinking caffeine, then going for a run, listening to a podcast, always stimulated. And we don't realize what a effect that's having our nervous system long term. So you bringing awareness to this feels so important.
Yeah. And I mean, to that point, I like to think of everything when I work with clients. Like, I don't think there's one shoe fits all for anybody when it comes to diet and stuff like that. And how I look at my interaction with this world is like evolution, because evolution is always happening for you, right? There's never a mistake. And we've been evolving as humans for hundreds of thousands of years. And so if you look at evolution and how we even developed the sympathetic fight or flight state, right? We were living in the jungle and we needed to run or fight a tiger or whatever predator came. So our bodies needed to quickly, even if it was at night, like turn on, send or create adrenaline, cortisol, send the oxygen away from our vital organs to our extremities to survive, right? That was only supposed to last an hour, maybe two. And then we're supposed to shake it off and be in that parasympathetic rest and digest state. And I was fortunate enough 4 or 5 months ago to go to Serengeti for the Great Migration and watch like the jungle and the lions. And they are in a parasympathetic state 90+% of the day. Like that's what animals are meant to be. If you fast forward to today, we wake up from our deepest parasympathetic state of sleep. Your brain is oscillating in delta. We get up and we look at our phone, or we go to work, or we have an argument with the spouse, and we stay in this mind-made, perceived, sympathetic, stressful state for 8, 10, 12, 14 hours a day, day over day, week over week, month over month, with no fluctuation, right? Mm-hmm. And so that is where you see all these diseases and vast aging and everything that is happening comes from staying in that state for prolonged periods of time. Because again, on a cellular level, that's what leads to inflammation.
Yeah. And how do you think, what are alternative ways to actually manage your nervous system? Like, I want to know what a day in the life of Salim looks like.
So there's actually a couple of things we talk about before we get into that. First, everybody wants to know what is a good HRV score, right? And that is a question that like I smile at, because first, just to clarify to the audience, a higher HRV score, meaning a wider gap between each of your heartbeats, indicates a more malleable and resilient heart, so it could handle more perceived stress. So it's kind of counterintuitive, because people think like, oh, you want a lower score. You want a lower heart, not you want, but in general, a lower heart rate means more calm. And if you think about that, a lower heart rate, if your heart is beating 40 beats per minute compared to 60, there will be more of a gap between each of those beats because there's less beats. And that's what HRV is, right? So it doesn't directly correlate, but in general, that's a good way to like think of it if anyone's ever confused. So the higher the score, the better. But the most important thing with HRV, which is everyone's so guilty of, and like the Whoop, I think, compares you with others and like has you could do it with friends, is to not compare. The second you compare and bring that comparison and think, oh my God, theirs is better and I want better, you are instantly impacting your HRV, because your HRV is not just what you eat or how much you work out. It is a measure of the totality of how your heart is perceiving its environment. So it's what you watch, what you listen to, your geographic location, energetically who you're with. Every single thing you do, every thought that you have impacts your HRV, right? To the point, I share this example that like is profound to some people. My body's so beautifully dislocated my shoulder last summer. And I asked for it, and I was furious with how it happened. Fell off the bike, like insane. And I woke up the next morning after being in the ER, and I have to dislocate to relocate it. So much pain. And my HRV was down at 32. And my baseline at that time was like about 180, right? So massive, massive hit to the nervous system. I get on a call with my coach that day, explaining it all. I'm replaying and I'm frustrated. And I tell him the whole story and what happened. And essentially, long story short, on my birthday, which was a couple weeks earlier, I asked to step into less doing, more being. I got gifted this bike from the community. And the first time I take this bike out, I get the gift of less doing, more being, because your arms represent the doing, the body represents the being, the shoulder connects the doing to the being, and the bike so beautifully gifted me exactly what I asked for from the gift in front of everybody I asked for it. And when he shared this breakdown to me, I had a paradigm shift. I laughed at the situation and the comedy of this. And I woke up the next morning, 24 hours later, same pain, same everything, but my HRV score was 95. So I tripled my HRV score simply from my perception of my reality, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it really, really is everything in thought. So that's where, to wind back to comparing, you do not compare.
Yeah.
I like to think of HRV as a language in which our heart is communicating with us. You don't compare one language to the other. You don't say English is better than French or vice versa. The purpose of a language is to allow for communication within an ecosystem. The purpose of HRV is to allow for the communication within your body's own ecosystem. That is it. And so it's more important to understand what your baseline HRV is. And I define baseline HRV as the average the last 30 days that you've had. And so then when you wake up, if your current moment HRV score is below your baseline, it's not a bad thing at all, because there is no good or bad. That is your heart indicating you put a little more of a stressful load than we've been used to. Give me a recovery day, honor it, do maybe a cold plunge, do a meditation, don't push it as much today, right? If you wake up and you have a higher HRV score than your baseline, it's like, oh, you could go push it a little in the gym or give a little more milder stress at work. We have more energy, right? So when you use it like that, it becomes an incredible tool and technology to support how you can go about your day.
And in that, is it better to stay in a more consistent range? Like, you don't want to see such extremes within your own HRV. It's better to be seeing it at a more consistent average.
It ideally you want to see it maintain or go up, and if it's going up, that's incredible. If it's going down, it's not a bad, because again, if it goes, it's going to go down in order to go up. So how do you improve your HRV? That's the next question that gets asked, right? And so again, if you wind back to evolution, we were fluctuating, right, throughout the day, sympathetic, parasympathetic. Think of it, I like to say, and I got this from my coach, Michaela Grace, training to be an emotional athlete. That's how I work with my clients. Train them to be an emotional athlete. When you train to be a physical athlete, you don't go to the gym and you don't do the bare minimum you can and go home. You go and you push beyond the limit, right? And then you rest, and then you go and push beyond the limit, and then you rest, right? So the nervous system, the heart, similarly. How do you improve your HRV? You actually put yourself in perceived stressful situations. You turn on your agency. You consciously breathe into a parasympathetic state or jump in a cold plunge. And then you go back to doing the stressful thing, right? And so when you ask what are things people can do today to work on HRV, how I was able to actually improve my HRV from a 30 to a 160, 180 baseline was I consciously put myself in arguably the most stressful industry you could imagine the last 5 years, raising money from 180 people, doing all these things, and then knowing the importance of HRV throughout the day, would use technologies to support getting my body in a parasympathetic state, even if it was for 10, 15 minutes, and then going back into the stressful state. So I've essentially trained my heart to have more malleability and resilience to handle more perceived stress, because this current modern day we're in with all the technology, it's not a bad thing. I don't believe in good or bad or right and wrong. It is, and it's here, and it's your relationship to it. And it's not what you do, it's the intention behind what you do, right? It's the frequency you infuse behind what you do, what you think, what you say. And so one of my favorite quotes is from the Bhagavad Gita. I'm not sure if you read or familiar with the Bhagavad Gita. Oh, I feel like you would very much enjoy it. It's like the Tao Te Ching of Hinduism. And the quote is, you have a right to your actions, but never the fruits of your actions. Act for your action's sake and don't be attached to inaction. So if you break that down, essentially, I believe we all came here to do, right? It's not about not doing. We came here to do. Don't be attached to anything you do. That's where most of the stress and the suffering comes from. Don't be attached to it, but do it simply for the sake of doing it, right? And when you align that doing with your soul, with what your purpose is, then magic continues to unfold. And it's another way you could think of HRV. I believe it's a measure of how aligned you are with your soul, because the nervous system is the most intricate system that covers 90% of all our voluntary and involuntary functions that we know so little about. It's crazy. And it's not really a theory, but it's kind of my truth. Anytime I get in my lovely, beautiful mind too much and go down rabbit holes, I remind myself, my answer to my favorite question, which is a little geeky, what is systematically responsible for the electric signal that causes my heart to beat, that causes your heart to beat, that causes everybody's heart to beat, right? And this is a question that for me, like my mind like loves, and science has not found an answer to that. It's not the brain, because the brain can be off and the heart still goes, and it's not the breath, right? So my truth to that is source, God, love, consciousness, awareness, Allah, whatever you want to call the creator, in which we all come from, and I believe we go back to, is the thing that's sending that signal for each of our hearts to beat, right? And so that means that the heart is the seat of our soul, which is said a lot of people believe that truth. And so the heart is also the center of the nervous system. So that means the nervous system, which is an electric system, acts as a bridge between where we all come from and our manifested reality that we create with our thought and our senses. And I believe all our soul's journey in this incarnation is to clear this electric system, to clear this bridge, to allow our soul to come through us, come through this vessel, because all our souls, one, come from the same place and want the same thing and have their own unique imprint in how that gets delivered. And so all we need to do is work on that nervous system. And what is in that nervous system? Stuck emotions, or energy in motion, and somatic sensations from past trauma in our life and past lives and generational trauma. And so HRV is measuring how clear that bridge is, how regulated your nervous system is.
Yes. And to listen to your nervous system, like actually listen to what it's telling you. Like when you're feeling that tightness, when you're feeling that stress, like obviously HRV is that measure, but to learn to actually, say you weren't measuring it, to actually like learn to listen to that, be like, okay, this is like stressful in my body. Maybe this environment, maybe this career choice, maybe this person, this relationship is not it for me because my nervous system is telling me this.
So you just literally gave the foundation of my coaching work, comes down to somatic meditation, somatic trigger work. And so if you were to map out your body, anytime you have an internal conflict or an external manifestation, right, that is, perceived not good, beneath that, there's always an emotion. And directly connected to that emotion is a physical somatic sensation. And if it's a relationship that's not going good or whatever it is, our minds think this is causing something in our body to feel. But in reality, there's something in our body that hasn't been felt, that we are creating this external thing for us to bring awareness to the body, because we live in an educational simulation. Like, that's what this matrix is. It's always speaking to us. Our minds have us thinking it is one thing, but if in that moment of a relationship problem or someone cutting you off or whatever the trigger is, if you can pause, if you could drop out of the mind and drop into the body and do a somatic practice, and by that, I mean physically to describe the sensations in your body. So not, I feel anxiety or knot in my stomach. Like, no, I feel a pulsing energy that is going in a circular motion in my lower left abdominal that is now going up to my lung, and like get out of the mind label and into the sensation. What magically happens is this emotion, the stuck energy in motion, slowly starts to move, because all it wants is to be seen and felt. And what it actually is, in an incredible book, The Body Keeps Score, talks about this, because our bodies are Akashic records, right? At some point in our life or a past life, there was a traumatic thing that the nervous system in that point in time couldn't handle. So essentially it splits, goes into a sympathetic state, and this emotion, which all it needed was like 1 to 3 minutes to actually feel, because there's no bad emotions, they just need to be felt. This emotion gets stuck in this moment in that nervous system, and you end up replaying that in different patterns as you grow, because we are really just adults living in this grown-up meat suit, replaying our traumas from our formative years and past lives.
Wow. So you do a lot of trauma work as well.
I would say, I call it somatic trigger work, trauma work, little trauma, big trauma. I mean, anything can be perceived as trauma. I do a lot of basically one of the other easy ways to say what HRV is. It's a measure of how much are you in your body and out of your mind, right? How much are you listening to your body, listening to your heart, and out of your mind? And I think the foundation of my work is supporting people getting more into their bodies. And I think that is crucial, because our bodies are the most intuitive instrument, period. Like, I don't know if you're familiar with kinesiology or have read Power versus Force by Dr. David Hawkins, but like it is like the biggest cheat code in the world because kinesiology and muscle testing is about, like, I believe it is very real because our minds lie all the time. They lie to deceit, not only to the outside, but mostly actually, if we pause and look at it, to ourselves, and I'm the most guilty of it. But our hearts are governed by different laws of physics because, again, our heart is the seat of our soul, and all our souls come from the same place. So that it cannot lie. Our body will go weak when presented with like an artificial flavor versus going strong when presented with a real flavor. Like there's all these tests that have been done. It's insane. And so if we can just listen to what our bodies are telling us, we will be divinely guided in all of our interactions. The issue and challenge is our culture and our society has so much programmed us to think, right? I think, therefore I am. Wow, that has gone down so many rabbit holes and led us to where we are right now. And so I think this age of Aquarius and this like transition in time and all the perceived chaos we're seeing is very much asking us to feel more rather than to think. So yeah.
Wow. You are just speaking my language. I literally was reading a book yesterday and it was just talking so much about, our thoughts are just created by us and they're just stories that we're telling ourselves. But if we just keep thinking in the same cycles day in, day out, that's the story that we believe. And that is not truth. And in knowing that we can trust our bodies and listen to our bodies, and The Body Keeps the Score, I found that such a powerful book because I think so many of us wouldn't even realize little traumas that we've all had along the way and how that manifests in our bodies. Just like, I mean, they talk about tightness in the hips and it's like this emotional release. Like that is so true. When you stretch so deeply in your hips, I have literally been brought to tears, and that's not just pain, like as in that's not just physical pain. It was like emotional. And so we hold so much more emotion and so much more truth in our bodies than we really give credit to. Wow. Speaking the language. I love it.
Yeah. There is, let's talk about regulating the nervous system because there are so many, biohacking, as much as it has this like perception of hacking, right? Which is also something I'm kind of working on. If we go back to intention, right? If you bring the intention to balance and to regulate your nervous system in these technologies, the benefits are incredible because you will get that. Like when you make an intention, you get your intention. Maybe not always the way you want or think, but that's what happens. And so if we were living in the jungle like we used to, we wouldn't need cold plunges or red lights or hyperbaric oxygen therapy chambers, or all these tools, because we'd have all that innately in nature and we'd be. But we are choosing to live these active lifestyles in these cities, in this fast-paced life, and all these toxins and things that we are taking our body through. If you use these technologies to support that, they could be instrumental, right? And at the same time, they're not needed. So it's that balance. And I have been on like the pendulum of both ends where, when I was in my extreme, I was using these technologies and basically creating my life around them rather than using them to support. And this recent sabbatical that I went on and traveled for like 3.5 months, which was just like fuel for my soul. I didn't use a single technology, didn't have my hyperbaric, didn't have all the things. Maybe I did like 3 saunas the entire time and like some cold plunging, like naturally, and also in some. And I had the highest HRV. I mean, I was able to get my HRV back up post my surgery, which that's another fun fact. The day before my surgery, my HRV was 151, and the day after it was 8. And I share that because people are like, "Oh my God, I'm in the teens. I have this. Am I going to die?" Like, no, you're not going to die from having a one-off, like, and I know you mentioned that, a really low HRV one day. Like, that's just your body telling you put a crazy load on your nervous system. For me, that load was anesthesia, nerve blocker, cutting a piece of my coracoid, reattaching it to my shoulder socket with 2 titanium screws. Like I did a lot to my body. And so it is okay. Just be aware of it and make sure you want to see that. Obviously do things to listen to your body to see it go up. And it took about like a month and a half for me to get mine back in the 3 digits. And it was actually my trip that I finally was able to get back to my baseline pre-surgery.
I love that because Yeah, I had a weekend away in Ojai, staying at a friend's place, and it was the most peaceful weekend. This was over Thanksgiving weekend, and they have the most beautiful property. I was out in nature. I actually slept out in their camper van. I mean, we just spent the days like reading by the fire, drinking tea, going for walks, swimming in the waterfalls, like very immersed in nature. It was so peaceful. In bed by 8:30, and I woke up with like a 220 HRV, and I was like, oh yeah, this is it. This is what it's all about. Like that is such an indicator.
I mean, that's your body telling you it loves what you just did. It loves being in nature. It loves being away. And Ojai also is just a magical little portal. Like,
Yeah.
so it's, I mean, listen to that and see what you can do to give your body that as much as possible, right? I think is very important.
Yeah, I've got to ask this question for Brooke, who is my co-host for the podcast, and we do separate interviews. And she was so excited that I was speaking to you because HRV has been the bane of her existence, and I think for a while she thought she was dying because she is consistently in the teens and has been all of the time she's had her Aura ring. I think for like a couple of years. And I think she sometimes sees it goes up, but like generally she can't get it out of the teens and she just doesn't know how.
Yeah, I mean, and a lot of my clients start out like that too. And that is a journey that, again, there's not one answer to that. And it would have to be, I mean, the somatic work is a great start in the exercise of really dropping into the body when there's triggers, because that's not a good or bad score. That's just her body telling her that this is where my nervous system is at. And the positive that she should look at that is that like there is so much room to grow. So however good she feels now and whatever she is like feeling, like the ceiling is endless, right? Like I kept like when I kept going up from 30 to 40, I was like, oh my God, it gets better. And like it's crazy. Like I walk around now and I feel like I'm floating most of the time. And people like even say like what it's, yeah, it should be seen not as a bad thing, but just as like an opportunity. And I think if you can shift your perception of things that are happening to you, that's really when you see your HRV going up. And I like to think of this educational simulation that we live in as a game. Like I love gamifying things because my mind is very competitive. And I don't know if you remember the game Super Mario.
Yes.
Or Mario? Yeah, of course, classic. So at the end of every level of the game, a little scary music would come on. You get a little nervous because who is coming? The big bad Bowser, right? And as Bowser come, you get a little nervous, and you know all you have to do is hit Bowser 3 times or jump on him 3 times. And on the other side of Bowser is a flag, some good music, and a level up, right? That is truly all this educational simulation is boiled down to Bowser and Super Mario. Like when there's a perceived challenge or perceived discomfort, we get scared. And typically most people suppress and avoid it. But if you can actually feel it, if you could drop into your body and feel and just feel it for 3 hits for Bowser, 3 minutes, like for 1 to 3 minutes, feel what's happening, knowing and trusting on the other side of whatever you are going through, there is always, always, always a level up, some good music, and a flag, like always. And if you bring that levity to this reality that we live in, it becomes a lot more fun. And levity and humor are crucial in HRV and nervous system regulation.
I love that. That's a great analogy. And I think in life, you know, I've always said when you hit rock bottom, you just got to get back up. And all the times in my life that I can look back where I felt like I was at rock bottom, the moments after were my best times. And you just embrace that. It's like if you can just trust that it's going to get better.
Oh yeah. And what's crazy is the deeper and the harder moments, like for me at least, have been the higher and higher on the other side, because that's all this is. It's a roller coaster. And similar to HRV training or workout training, like in order to get to the next peak, you need to push it that much more. And so then the mastery really becomes maintaining the stillness in the middle way amidst it all. And really, yeah, just accepting and yeah.
Wow. I love this. It's inspiring because you can see it helps you be able to get through the harder situations, knowing that it's going to get better on the other side. And it's hard when you're in it and when you're struggling through health things or mental things or anything. And then always you can reflect back, and this has happened for me recently, and I look back and I keep a journal so that I can really recognize where I'm at. I'm like, whoa, I was in a dark place and now I'm in such a good place. And I've been able to look back on my journal and reflect and see that where I was and now where I am now. And I literally just said to myself recently, like, oh, Maddie, you just had to get through that. And like, you've done that before and you'll do that again. So like, the darkest of dark brings the lightest of light.
Totally. And I'd offer a reflection to that. And what I have found for me that has worked so well is when you go through that darkness, if you can realize like the darkness actually is what our mind is labeling dark. All that darkness is, if we map out the body, is a sensation in the body that's attached to an emotion that was never seen or felt, right? That our mind is calling darkness. So you really move through the darkness and transmute it into light when you feel it. And so I've had clients who write in journals and like stuff like that. And what I've reflected to them is that journal entry then is actually like, it's a magic gift. And if you can intentionally go and do a somatic practice, and this is kind of one of the baselines of the work I do with clients is I basically, I call it like a nervous system regulation, like exercise or activation. And so get in a parasympathetic state via box breathing or just something to like spend 1 to 2 minutes to like calm down in the nervous system in a morning practice or whatever. And then intentionally elicit a trigger. So I call it like somatic trigger work. So intentionally call to your mind's eye something that triggers you, or read that journal entry that you had when you were in a dark place. And then as soon as you feel that trigger, get out of the mind, drop out of the mind, forget all that, and drop into somatic meditation awareness and just physically describe the sensations that are happening in your body. Like we talked about, the energy moving or the heat or the vibration or the tightness. Just continue to drop into that and out of the mind, and be aware when the mind comes in trying to tie it back to whatever it was perceived caused the trigger, and spend 1, 2, 3 minutes in that state. You are training your heart and nervous system to be like, whatever you thought was causing it, it's actually just this feeling. And then whenever you've had enough of that, go back in a parasympathetic state, either thinking of 3 things you're grateful for, tapping on the seat of your soul, your chest, or breathing into your heart, doing something to then reward the body and let the heart know, oh, it's actually okay. In this practice, transformative to transmute that darkness, right? Because again, that perceived darkness that was in the journal entry or whatever it is, it's really just energy. It's a sensation. That's all any of this is. And if you could spend time exercising and training your heart and body that is what's happening, it just, the awareness around that becomes more and more apparent and easier to navigate. And you could find that kind of middle way, because you're like, oh yeah, outside my business is crumbling, financially crumbling. I had my shoulder torn up, 2 titanium screws, and yeah, that's all showing me something. What is it showing me?
Wow. Okay, so you were completely rocked to your core with everything that went down, the level that you'd pushed your mental and physical body to. And this is when you took a turn and just fully started focusing on yourself, your nervous system, education around HRV.
No, I had thought, my mind had thought I was doing that already. I've taken many turns, and that's the thing. There's never, I believe, as long as this body of Salim is still here, there's still more to learn and grow. And so there wasn't like, it was one of many turns. And this specific turn came actually when my body, I mentioned my shoulder injury, and I asked on my birthday last year in June to step into less doing and more being, right? And then my body so beautifully gifted me that. And so I went on this sabbatical with contemplating that statement, like less doing, more being, because I thought I was still doing too much. And it dawned on me one morning in Bali, I had this like epiphany that that statement, less doing, more being, is mind-made and dualistic in nature. And it implies that doing and being is mutually exclusive. And if you think about it, we're actually always being. We're not aware of it 99% of the time, but we're always being. And we're always doing, even if we're sleeping or sitting or breathing. So it is not about doing less than being at all. It goes back to my favorite quote and intention, the intention behind your doing, right? And so I was in a place where I thought, oh, I'm still doing too much with all these things. And it wasn't that I was doing too much. I just wasn't aligned with my highest self and my pure purpose in what I was doing. And so my body recalibrated me to now be aligned with the current purpose in what I feel, which will, I'm sure, continue to change, and it'll continue to share with me what it likes and what it does like. And I will continue to try to listen as much as possible. But that was a very like wow moment for my mind to like realize that like no, like doing is actually great. Like there's nothing wrong with doing, and that's what we're here really to do. And I believe that people with the biggest desires could have the biggest impact, right? It's just a matter of steering that desire in alignment with your soul, in alignment with your purpose. And that's who I tend to work with my clients now. Massive desires, massive external success, and it's just recalibrating that back to alignment with what you came here to do and what lights you up, what lights your body up the most, not what lights up your mind, because our mind is so preconditioned from our upbringing and from our generational, from ancestors and from our past. And so to really feel into what the body wants, and infuse that into every action you do is really, I know it sounds simple and cliche, but it's truly the most like remarkable thing when you do it. But in order to do it, it takes the discipline too. Like for me, the thing I care about most and the most important time of my day is my morning like practice. Like that is, I for the past 6 months since I went on my sabbatical and been back, like I have honored that more than anything, because that is when I connect with my soul, with my purpose. I have conversations, I cry, I do all the things so that the rest of the day, it's very clear on like when something happens. Oh yeah, no, that is a line that's dissonant, that's resonant. Like it's a no brainer, and I could just act. And so it does take work. It doesn't just happen, right? And yeah.
Love that. But this is such important work. And I literally had this. So I go for morning walks without my phone, without anything, so I can just walk in silence and just think. And that's when my best things come to me. And literally on my morning walk this morning, I was like, what? I was so in such a good mood yesterday. I was so calm. I was so happy. I mean, obviously it was a Sunday, but I started the day with, I went to a Bhakti Vinyasa class, and it was just like the breath work, like the breathing, the movement, everything. I felt so energized after it. And I was like, whoa, we have this, what we can find within if we just can let it, like find it, rather than starting the day like we usually do, like reaching for our phone and looking for that stimulation of looking at notifications, or going straight for the caffeine to give us that stimulation and straight into this world of let's go. But if we can find it, like breathing, like the energy that I felt just naturally from that was so different, and it let my body, instead of chasing this stimulation all day, I was just at peace. And I was like, I want this gift for everyone. And that's, yeah, this morning, your morning routine, our morning routines are it, setting us up for success for the day.
Oh yeah. It's a non-negotiable for me. And I'm fortunate to have now be in a place after losing everything and like dying to like have it be the center of my day. And like I'm up usually around 6:30, and I don't communicate with the outside world or do anything till about like 9. And I get my exercise in the morning, and I do like, it's a total me time that involves breath work and yeah, all the things. And it is absolutely crucial for me.
It's so beautiful that obviously you went through the hardest time of your life, but that you were able to get to where you are now, and then you're able to help people find that. And I think this is just so important, because we are in this society of everyone's doing what they think they should be doing and how they think they should be earning money and the life that they think they should be living. But actually, like, you're helping people come back to themselves and actually do the work, or find the career or the purpose that is so much more aligned with them, this is the message that we want to put out there with the Expanders Club. Like this, we want to help people feel okay and trust to like lean into their purpose.
It's a beautiful message you guys are putting out, and it's an honor to support it.
Oh, wow. Thank you. It's so good to have you here and spreading this message. This is strong. Okay, so let's take it back. What if you were to recommend someone to measure their HRV? What do you think the best ways to measure it are?
Yeah, there's a lot of wearables out there. I currently have the Oura Ring just because it's the most minimalistic. But there's Whoop, which is great. Apple Watch. Those are the three major ones that, like, I'd say are for the common consumer. Athletes have been doing this forever, and they have like real time chest straps, and I've tried all that, which is great. But you don't need that data. Um, I am working on an app that will make it much more easy and yeah, I hope to have it out in a couple months, and essentially you'll just need a phone to measure your HRV. So stay tuned for that. That'll be nice. Yeah,
We are patiently waiting over here for that, Salim.
yeah.
That sounds amazing. What do you think? Like you said, when you compare your HRV to other people, you can stress yourself out, right? Like that's not adding to your own HRV. So what are your
We'll,
opinions?
we'll pause there. It's not adding if you're doing it. It depends on the intention and why you're comparing, right? If you're comparing because you want to beat that person because you think it'll be better for your validation externally, like that's not a good thing. But there's nothing wrong with comparing with the intention, like, oh, that it's possible to get to that. Let me go back and listen to mine so I can get there, right? So again, I want to emphasize there is no good or bad. It's just the intention that you bring into what you do is super, super important. And the biggest message is like, know that your HRV is your own language, and really, really listen to it.
Yeah. Yeah. Using it in a positive way to actually improve your life. I mean, is there a level where we become too obsessed with it?
Uh, I mean, yes, there's no way that answer can't be known. There was at one point in my journey, like especially the beginning of it, when I was still in my extreme biohacking phase, and I realized what it was like. The first couple months, I was trying to crack the code, and I couldn't because I was so obsessed with it and not realizing I just need to listen. So yeah, you absolutely can become obsessed. And the other thing I want to say is it's also just a number and a placebo, right? So that's why, like, what I have found of like the readiness score to sleep score, like sometimes I'll wake up and my sleep score is bad and I feel great. Sometimes I'll wake up and I feel like crap and my sleep score was great. The one measure that has always correlated with how I feel energetically has been the HRV. And I also know, like, if my body is telling me something different, I listen to my body, right? That's the most important thing.
Yeah, I think that's what we come back to. That's exactly right. And it's like learning to actually listen to our bodies. And
But that's why I think HRV is so crucial in this time that we're in, because so much of us aren't used to that and aren't programmed for that because we've been so programmed to think and to look at data. And HRV is data of measuring how much you are in your body, right? So I think it's an incredible language and technology that supports bridging the East and the West and spirituality and modern technology, because it allows you to measure how much you are listening, right? But you don't want to take it to that extreme where it's like, oh my God, I become obsessed with it. It's again, it all comes back to the middle way, the Tao.
yeah, the healthy level, the healthy level. And like you were saying before, like you can get caught up in all of this biohacking, like using all of this technology, but proving if we lived in an environment that was more connected with the environment and in the outdoors and in nature and a calmer way of living, that would just naturally relax our nervous systems.
Not even a question. Yes. And at the same time, on a practical 3D level, people have their truths and have their families and all the things. So that's why it's like, yeah, you really need to tune in and listen to what your body is telling you is best in the moment. Yeah.
This is why I daydream. I know we live in Venice and I love the life here, but we're highly stimulated in this life. And I do dream of just living out on a farm, living on the coast, living in a very rural place and feeling so at ease. Part of me wants that so bad. And then there's a part of me that's like, no, I could never live this like city life. I don't want to leave it. Like I love bumping into people everywhere you go. And it's like, as humans, like, what's that healthy mix?
Yeah, I have a similar desire, and my intention that I committed to myself after going on this like soul trip is I will be traveling 4 to 6 months a year,
Mm,
and enjoying like that kind of life, and then coming back and doing the work that I believe my soul is here to do in terms of like impact and supporting this version of the Matrix and this and and the people in it. So yeah, you got to find the balance, and if you are craving that like farm life, like give yourself it a little more and be okay with
yeah.
sacrificing some of what maybe it's the mind that's loving the people. Like, not community is everything. It's one of the most important things for your HRV, because that's, I mean,
Mm.
yeah, that just leads to happiness. The right community, though, obviously. So yeah, I would play around with it and see. I think that's an incredible score you got in Ojai, and you should like work with that a little more.
Slim, such a good coach. So talk to us that this is the work that you do. So you work with people one on one.
I work with a handful of people one on one. Not a lot, and it's not something like I necessarily promote. I do have the capacity to take a couple more clients. I've never like pushed it. I I really, again, my intention is to just like bring as much education and awareness to this. So like my social media platform and the app, hopefully, and a course with that is how I foresee really impacting many more people, because you can only do so much one on one with someone.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, looking at your Instagram, your social media, it's such a great platform. You have just like, you have such a clear way of putting it out there and helping people. And the fact that you're just purely want to educate, yeah, it's a beautiful thing. So selfless.
Yeah, that's what the last death and journey had taught me, and yeah, it's I'm very excited for it and grateful for it.
Mm, this is so beautiful. Well, okay. I'm going to ask you the final question.
Okay.
Um, so Salim, can you describe in one word or a sentence your past self, your present self, and your future self?
This is a great question. My past self, I would say, is a young boy who believes his role is to support, provide, protect the people he loves the most. And every action he did was with that as the underlying um, intention. My present self is that same young boy who is uh, learning to play and enjoy and experience, and not not worry about needing to do anything for anybody, but rather just, yeah, just being.
Mm.
My future self is that same young boy in his fullest expression of joy, love, creativity, play, dance, all the things. Yeah.
Wow. I love how your future self almost sounds the most childlike.
Isn't that funny? And I always say we learn the most from babies. They are the closest to God I think we could get outside of ourselves, because they don't have any of the conditioning,
Mm-hmm.
and their channel is totally open. Their nervous system does not have much electric emotion in that bridge. So, yeah, that is funny. I didn't even realize that. Yeah, it's
And
Benjamin Button. Yeah,
yeah, and we're all just on a journey to get back to ourselves, our
we're all going
childlike
back to where we
self,
came from.
to
Yeah,
who we
it's,
truly are without
yeah,
the conditioning,
yeah.
without
Hmm.
all of the thoughts and all of the everything that's playing on our mind every day that we just think are all of these threats.
Yeah.
When, wow, that
Hmm.
was beautiful.
Yeah.
Salim, what a
Maddie, thank you
pleasure.
so much. Yeah, yeah, and we'll have to hang. We're neighbors, so yeah.
We're neighbors, would absolutely love to. so much to learn from you, and you just seem like such a level-headed, grounded, intentional human, and it's really beautiful.
I will receive that. Thank you so much. And thank you guys for the work you do on this podcast. The world needs it.
Oh, thank you. Can you tell our audience where they can find you?
Yeah, my social media handles are that HRV guy, THAT guy. Funny story, people that don't know about HRV look at it and they're like, that RV guy. Like they don't. No, I'm not that RV guy. And my guess is by the time this airs, my hope is that my website will be up too. I'm working on it right now. So within a week or two, it should be, and it's the same, just thathrvguy.com, THATHRVguy.com. And it'll have kind of like HRV decoded, some PDFs people can download, and kind of like just a free educational platform, because there really isn't much out there. And it's been a project I've been working on for a while. So I'm excited to get out.
We're so excited to see more of you, more of your stuff out there. Powerful. Thank you. Thanks for sharing.
Thank
All right,
you.
Salim.
All right.
Goodbye.
Bye.